This is EHCR, East Harlem Community Radio, also known as El Barrio Radio, coming to you from the James Weldon Johnson Houses in Harlem, USA. And the program that you're about to hear, The Wisdom Table, does not reflect the views, attitudes, whimsies, or any other proclivities of the management of the complex, nor that of the center, the community center. However, the program does reflect the research done by the participants in the program who are live and in living color in the studio, and also by phone interview. And that's our first interview today with a young man in Houston, Texas. And he is one of the most productive writers that we have. He's in the same category as Brother Herb Boyd. They put out two books every 3 months, something like that. But anyway, Gerald Horne is one of our greatest thinkers in the U.S., and that means among all people. And we've invited him on the show today to give an assessment of the elections. We hear quite often what the midterm elections last week meant to the Democrats or meant to the Republicans, but very little do we hear in terms of what the elections meant or mean to black folks. So we'd like to get that from you, along with your other assessments. Brother Gerald Horne, you are on. God bless you.
Well, thank you for inviting me. With regard to your question, I would point first of all to the vote in Louisiana, where the electorate decided that in order to be convicted for a felony, that is to say a major crime, there has to be a unanimous jury verdict. Louisiana was unusual in terms of allowing for split decisions to lead to a person being consigned to Angola State Prison in Louisiana, one of the most horrific prisons in this country. It's the capital of mass incarceration, featuring incarceration of our people in particular, and note that it's Angola State Prison, not coincidentally named after a country in southwest Africa, Angola, which deposited many of the finest sons and daughters on these shores for enslavement. Likewise, in Florida, the electorate decided that felons could have their voting rights restored after serving their time in prison. This will lead to about 1.3, 1.4 million individuals, many of them of African origin, regaining the right to vote. This will affect elections in Florida for some time to come. And as you know, if that particular vote held last Tuesday had been in place last Tuesday, it probably would have provided a comfortable cushion of support for the man of African descent, Andrew Gillum, who was running for governor and is now behind, although there is a recount, he's only behind by less than 1 percentage point, about 0.41%. Likewise, in the state of Georgia, Stacey Abrams, a woman of African descent, is calling for a recount, calling for an accurate count of absentee ballots and provisional ballots, which, if counted accurately, could lead to her becoming the first black woman governor, or minimally, it could lead to knocking down her opponent, Brian Kemp, below the 50% range, which would mean a runoff, which would mean that she would get another bite at the apple, so to speak, in a runoff election that will take place in a few weeks. Interestingly enough, Brian Kemp was Secretary of State of Georgia up until a few days ago, which meant that he was supervising the election in which he was a candidate, strikingly enough, and had been accused credibly in the run-up to this election of being very demonic and devilish and striking from the voting rolls many black voters in particular. Now, stepping back for a second and looking from 30,000 feet, you'll notice that 2 Muslim women were elected to Congress, a Somali American from Minneapolis, a Palestinian American from Detroit. You might also have noticed that the president's party, the Republican Party, lost about 3 dozen seats in the House of Representatives. Now, Mr. Trump argued that if you look at what happened to Bill Clinton in 1994, when he lost about 4 dozen seats, including in the House and Senate, or Mr. Obama in 2010, when he lost about 5 dozen seats, including the House and Senate, Mr. Trump says losing 3 dozen seats in the House and actually getting a pickup or 2 in the Senate shows that he did quite well. That's his analysis. That's probably an overstatement, but it's not altogether inaccurate.
Very good. The what do you see as it relates, or what have you picked up as it relates to the economic situation as it relates to blacks who are in the pipeline of school? That's one, and the other being those of us who are working or retired. What have you picked up in terms of that kind of prospect for black people, good, bad, or indifferent?
Well, interestingly enough, voters in a number of red states, as they're called, better to say, top-leaning states, voted to raise the minimum wage, which is striking because, as you know, folks of African descent are oftentimes at that level of the socioeconomic pyramid, and raising the minimum wage will obviously lift their votes, which is good. A number of voters also voted to accept Medicaid, which, as you know, is the federal government program that provides health care for the indigent. The states were states like Nebraska, which only has a black population around Omaha for the most part, but still that is significant because it goes against the grain with regard to how we had expected the so-called red states to vote. I expect that with this new majority in the House, those who are who receive a Social Security check should probably expect a boost in their Social Security check next year, and perhaps even the year after that, which obviously is good news. You can probably expect a lesser number of attacks on what is referred to as Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act. In fact, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell of Kentucky said as much in the post-election press conference, and that, I would say, good news as well. But I don't want to sugarcoat the results of the election. I mean, basically, looking from 30,000 feet, what happened in the election is that we took a step back from the brink of fascism with the ascendancy of Mr. Trump and his white nationalist crew. But unfortunately, the pundits and the analysts have not given us an analysis to help to explain how we got to the brink of fascism in the first place. Because, as you know, the historical narrative of this country how, shockingly enough, limits democratic tradition. How that can take place, to speak of democratic tradition, the country built upon genocide against Native Americans and mass enslavement of the Africans, country where the highly touted, quote-unquote, Bill of Rights either did not apply to the African population, which was enunciated in the late 18th century, or applied in a deadly fashion. Speaking of the Second Amendment, which guarantees gun rights, not only guarantees gun rights, it guarantees militia. Because the idea was that those who were defined as white, if there were a slave revolt or an uprising of the Native Americans, we could band together under the imprimatur of the state in militias and then mow down the rebels. So this is the true and accurate history of the United States, which suggests that any country so constituted is perpetually on the verge of fascism. And certainly the argument could be made that if you look at this spate of police killings, Michael Brown, for example, in Ferguson, and Philando Castile in Minnesota, and Eric Garner in Staten Island, etc., you can make an argument that there's a kind of neo-fascism that's visited upon the black population, and that sooner or later that neo-fascism would spread beyond the black population. But sadly and unfortunately, that kind of analysis is generally absent from our discourse.
Well, that's why it's important for voices like yours to be tapped into, and I'm not, giving you any more credit than what you're due. You come with a different point of view, but as long as the general media's point of view is listened to, that seems to be the only point of view, only assessment. You mentioned fascism. Would you define fascism? Would you define democracy? Would you define republic?
Well, with regard to fascism, there are a number of definitions one could look to. One could look to the definition that suggests that fascism is the open, naked, terroristic dictatorship of the most reactionary segment of the ruling class of the United States of America. Of course, it reached its zenith in Italy and Germany in the 1930s. It reached another kind of zenith in Chile from about 1973 to about 1990 under General Pinochet. It reached another kind of zenith in apartheid South Africa from approximately 1948 to 1994. Democracy is a highly contested term. Generally speaking, when people speak of democracy, they're speaking, and perhaps in a naive sense, of some sort of rule by voting, rule by the masses. I think anybody who spent a nanosecond in the United States knows that that's a contested definition because money talks in this country. The Supreme Court has said that spending money on an election equals free speech, and so therefore a Michael Bloomberg, billionaire, former mayor of New York City, to this level is with regard to elections, pump out a lot of propaganda, airwaves, and influence people to vote against their own interests. Having said that, I would say that a minimal prerequisite for one to be able to invoke the term fascism would be some kind of enfranchisement of the population over the age of 18. And even if you look at that minimal, bare bones definition, you find that the United States is lacking because the Voting Rights Act of 1965 has been shredded by the U.S. Supreme Court, which is one of the reasons you have so many problems with poor voting machines in black districts in Atlanta, for example. We wanted to vote for Stacey Abrams, and long lines in Atlanta, black communities for those who wanted to vote for Stacey Abrams. Now, the United States has been defined as a republic, that is to say, a regime where there is not an alleged monarchy. For example, what existed in England, the so-called mother country, for centuries, where there was a kind of divine right of a certain family to rule. However, this republic, so-called in the United States of America, supposedly entails and involves political participation by the masses, could really be considered a republic in only name only.
A republic in name only. Okay. So we have the wisdom table is open for questions. Any comments, any questions as to what Dr. Gerald Horne has shared up to this point? And if you do, just speak up, and he will answer within the few minutes that we have.
How are you, Brother Horne?
Yes.
Okay. This is Esther Hyatt, and I'm taking in all of the information that you've given us. And what came to my mind was the election tools, what we use to vote. And there have been some concerns about, will our votes be counted based on these new contraptions they have now, where they scan your vote and so forth. You get my point?
Sure.
Okay.
So
the question is, what do you think of these new voting machines? And do you think in certain parts of the nation black people, their votes are being counted, even when they get out there and vote? That's my question.
Well, obviously there's a problem with voting machines in this country, but I think you have to realize that it's not just a technical problem, it's a political problem. The political problem being that the Republican Party, which in many ways could be fairly considered the party of whiteness, is looking at the changing composition of the electorate, which is increasingly not being defined as, quote, white, unquote. And therefore, the Republican Party is engaging in all kinds of shenanigans to elude and evade the logic of the demography. What I mean is, if you look at the state of California, where the Republican Party is rapidly becoming a dead letter, that is difficult to separate from the fact that California is one of the so-called majority-minority states. That is to say, where the population, mainly of Mexican origin, is about 33 to 34% of the population. The population of Asian origin is about 12%. The population of African origin is about 7%. The population of indigenous, of Native American origin is about 2 or 3%. And the party of whiteness does not do very well in that kind of political environment. You also have so-called majority-minority states in Hawaii, Nevada, Mexico, and Texas. And this is a trend that's sweeping from the west to the east. In that context, the Republican Party has little incentive to have voting machines count the votes accurately. They have an incentive to have certain kinds of misdeeds and shenanigans where you may want to vote for a Democrat, but somehow the vote gets flipped for a Republican, or you have voting machines that may be connected to the internet, which allows for hacking, turning voting machines all around. But, you know, this is not something that I'm sure comes as a revelation to you that I'm speaking.
Okay. The we identify you as a scholar, Dr. Horne, and that's due to, you know, the volume of books that you put out, necessarily putting out. But from the standpoint of an educator, you're at the university level. What are you seeing in the pipeline of education as it relates to the quality, that is knowledgeableness, of the black students who are coming into the academic realm? What are you picking up? And therefore, whatever you're picking up, if it's positive, how we accentuate it. If it's negative, what should we be doing at the grassroots?
Well, I would say it's a mixed bag. And actually, the flaws that I see in the students I also see in their parents and their grandparents. What I mean is that, particularly with regard to students, I don't think they read enough. I mean, quite frankly.
I'm sorry, say that again.
I don't think they read enough.
That they don't read enough.
Yeah, that's what I just said.
Okay.
And not only in terms of books, but reading the newspapers on a daily basis, keeping up with international events, being able, I mean, and this is particularly the case for people of African descent because, I mean, there's a contradiction in the Black American history. On the one hand, they portray the situation correctly and understandably as being horrific and terrible for decades, if not centuries. I wholly accept that. I've even written books about it. But then that begs the question of how did we get to where we are today? Now, the obvious answer is we use international alliances. But since the erosion of the Jim Crow period, the apartheid period, there has been less of an emphasis on international alliances in our community, and therefore less staying up to date and up to speed about what's going on in Iran, what's going on in Russia, what's going on in Africa, what's going on in China. Not only what's going on, but then how you integrate that into an analysis that helps you navigate your way through the United States of America. So, you know, in critiquing young people, I'm actually, as I said, critiquing their parents and grandparents, because that's who they should be learning from. So if their grandparents and parents aren't doing it, why should the young people be doing it? So that's my major critique. On the positive in it, even the positive has a bit of negative in it. I mean, the positive is that the younger generation is much more conversant with technology. But I have students who would like, if you didn't stop them, they sit in class all day and sitting with looking at their smartphone. No, why are you sitting in class? You can look at your smartphone outside. You know, so these are some of the problems we have. I hope I'm not coming across as some sort of old folks, slightly the younger generation, which is why I also invite their parents and grandparents.
Repeat that on the grandparents and parents. That's why you.
Say that again?
No, you had said that's why you, and you said something in reference to parents and grandparents.
Well, what I was saying all along from the top is that it's not just a flaw of young people, it's a flaw of their parents and grandparents as well.
It's a family affair. It's a family affair.
Right.
So when you mention that, when we mention that, grandparents do and can play a major role in the literacy and just general awareness of the young people coming up in their families.
Oh, sure. Set a good example. It's like, to put it on another level, it's like, you know, you're smoking cigarettes and you're telling your children and grandchildren nothing. That doesn't work for it.
Got it. Okay, for the wisdom table, any other questions? While you're thinking of another question, this comment that was made by the lady in Mississippi, on the, you know, if her friend invited her to a public hanging, she would take a front seat, and that opened up the door as it relates to the history of Mississippi and lynchings. Your assessment from a historic standpoint, have lynchings stopped or have they taken a different form?
Well, sure. I mean, you can see that lynching or taking the form of police killing, for example, or even those acting in the guise of police, for example, like killing Trayvon Martin in Florida as a citizen march of volunteer a few years ago. Now, this comment about the senator from Mississippi is very revealing, and it only exposes the rather ugly history of lynching in Mississippi, particularly at the end of the U.S. Civil War, circa 1865, up until perhaps a few decades ago. But that phrase, "I'll be in the front row," or public hanging, is a common stock phrase, or has been, among Mississippians defined as white. And language can be revealing. I mean, you can oftentimes study history, studying language, or etymology, more precise term. I mean, for example, when I was doing research on my book, The White Pacific, which deals with the South Seas area from Hawaii heading westward, I was in Fiji. And in Fiji, you have people who look like yourself and myself. So Fiji is in the South Sea. But if you look at the indigenous Fijian language, there are words that are very similar to East African language, which suggests that there was some sort of migration from East Africa across the Indian Ocean millennia ago. That's what I mean by using language to study history. And so, likewise, if a stock phrase amongst Mississippians defined as white refers to being in the front row of a public hanging, that is telling us something about the culture. I mean, obviously, this is no revelation. Anybody who knows beans about history knows that Mississippi, with the 5, being Exhibit A, has a rather inglorious history of these kinds of executions.
Okay, so we're winding down questions from the wisdom table regarding the elections, regarding just general. He's done a number of books, and including Haiti. Is that correct?
Oh yeah, I did a book on Haiti. Came out a few years ago, confronting Black Jacobins, the United States, the Haitian Revolution, the origins of the Dominican Republic, which deals with the Haitian Revolution 1791 to 1804, which inflicts a shock on the entire slave system in the Americas, including in the United States of America, from which it had difficulty recovering from. It ignited a general crisis of the slave system. But I go beyond the revolutionary period up to the period of the 1840s when the Dominican Republic seceded from Haiti, not least because of assistance from the United States of America. Period after the U.S. Civil War, when there was this plan that barely failed to deport the black population to the island of Hispaniola, which includes the Dominican Republic and Haiti. So yeah, that book came out a few years ago.
Okay, and what grassroots level books would you recommend to our audience? Our immediate audience is the Wisdom Table. These are grandparents they're the grandparents, and they have grandchildren, of course, and great grands. What are some basic books that they can read and then pass on that knowledge to their children, etc.?
I'm not sure what you mean by basic books.
Basic books means your books. If I picked up your book, I can get into it from the level of reading that I've done. However, there are among our people, they haven't done beginner reading like J.A. Rogers, World's Great Men of Color. That I call a basic book, or biography on George Washington Carver, etc. So that's what I mean by basic book.
Well, I mean, I wrote a young adult book on the Scottsboro case some years ago. It could be found.
Okay.
It was written for teenagers, and I'm not sure the book written for teenagers a few years ago would be at the teenage level today. I'm not so sure. I mean, I wrote a book on Shirley, which has done quite well in the marketplace. So I think that's something.
Mm-hmm.
Because as you know, women tend to read more than men for whatever reason.
Right.
A book about the leading black woman activist. So let me just leave it at that.
Okay.
The book on the Scottsboro boys. Could you repeat that title? It's one of your books?
If you have access to, your brother has access to the internet, so just put Gerald Horne Scottsboro into questions and then the book will come up.
Okay. All right, good brother. I want to thank you. And just one last thing. China's involvement in Africa. What should we be watching in regards to that?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, I think the issue of China and Africa is much more of a concern here in North America than it is in Africa itself. Africans are looking for counterweight, particularly to French imperialism, U.S. imperialism, British imperialism, etc. Right now, there's a lot of hysteria on Wall Street and Washington about China in the passing lane, that China is surpassing U.S. imperialism, which has led to Mr. Trump's trade war. You might have noticed in this last press conference after the election, he boasted that his trade war has stopped China in its tracks. And interestingly enough, that kind of propaganda then trickles down to our community, but of course we put our own spin on it. Our spin is we're concerned about China now, as opposed to Mr. Trump's spin. But it's really just, I hate to say this, but it's just a way for the black population to sort of fit into the U.S. discourse. I would suggest that black Americans take their lead from President Buhari of Nigeria, President Ramaphosa of South Africa, who are looking for counterweight to U.S. imperialism, French imperialism, and British imperialism. And that was the same thing during the Cold War. Many of the Africans were looking for a counterweight to U.S. imperialism, French imperialism, etc. Then the U.S. Negroes got caught up in this Columbian fact. That was their way to fit into the Cold War discourse. So now history is repeating itself once again.
Got it. My brother, thank you very much for taking time out from your very busy schedule. We will be calling on you again, and may God continue to bless you and your family for your work and just for being a great person. Peace, my brother.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was Brother Gerald Horne.